Hello and welcome to the midday update for today, Wednesday, the 9th of September, 2020. We bring you an interview this afternoon with Dr. Didacus, Jules, Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, to speak to us about the much anticipated Sustainable Development Movement 2020 Summit scheduled for the 23rd and 24th of September 2020. We do hope you sit through the program, and special welcome to you. Good afternoon to you. If you're in your office right now having lunch, if you're at home in the kitchen, do stay tuned for the duration of this very important midday update, this information session of sorts, as we go into what one can expect for something that I think is so much needed, especially at this time, this COVID-19 environment, how we move, how we transcend, to make business work for us in our part of the world, especially. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Jules.
Hi, how are you? Thanks.
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. If you could just give us an understanding, an overview of the Sustainable Development Movement 2020 Summit.
Okay, well, the summit is a culmination of a whole series of events that we've had for the last 4 or 5 months. Stirring debate, looking at out-of-the-box solutions, getting people to think differently about not just the problems that we've been experiencing, but the challenges and the opportunities that have been embedded. The original intention was to have run this conference as a face-to-face event in St. Lucia with 700 people, and about 700 people physically present, and about 2,000 to 2,500 persons online. However, with the advent of COVID, we had to look at how we could pivot the event. So clearly it's no longer possible to have it as a face-to-face. We've now moved it to a total online experience, and it is going to be unlike anything anyone has experienced in the Caribbean before, because it is not just a Zoom call with people talking. It is going to be a real simulation of a virtual exhibition hall with rooms, with exhibitions, with showcasing events, with interactions between persons, access to various sessions according to the level of ticketing that one has. So it will be very much a virtual simulation of an actual exhibition event. And of the event is the culminating activity for these 2 days are going to be a series of multidisciplinary panels looking at different themes that are relevant to development, changing the development paradigm in the OECS at this point in time. So we'll be involving youth. So for example, one of the panels on youth is going to look at the JJRP project that we have, Juvenile Justice Reform Project. But looking at it not just from a project implementation perspective, but how do we change the whole matrix of youth engagement with the law? How do we convert our young people to be, respectful citizens, to be fully participating in the life of society? How do they take productive directions in their lives? So, and we are very clear that some of these things have to be path-breaking because, for example, there's a limit to how many jails you can build. So are we going to continue on the traditional path of this, justice as a punitive and corrective measure? Or are we going to take a pathway where we look at the issues of justice, particularly in relation to youth in conflict with the law, in a different way that looks at the possibility of making them productive citizens, not even having to have correctional facilities. It's interesting that in places like the Netherlands, they've actually been closing their jails, unlike other developed countries where they're building more and more jails. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at, the blue economy. We're looking at youth. We're looking at the question of resilience. We're looking at the question of innovation in education. Since COVID, we have pivoted a lot of our work around the COVID response, both in terms of immediacy of dealing with the challenges that COVID has brought to our table, but also importantly, looking at the opportunities that are embedded in the COVID experience. I'm sure everyone is aware that, for the last 15, 20 years, we've been talking about education and digitization, learning online, exams online. CXC has had that capability for the last 15 years. It's not been used. However, with COVID, we had to immediately pivot. So what we failed to do in 20 years, we've now been able to do in 2-3 weeks. In that sense, COVID has been a positive experience for us. So the idea is, how do we utilize this moment, not just to be safe and to address the immediate challenges, but how do we use that now to move to do the transformative steps that we need to take to make our societies fit for purpose in this century. So all of the events are going to happen. There are main events. We have headline speakers like Les Brown and Chinedu. We have a number of high-level investors who are coming on board to support the investment pitch with Damon John. What we hope to be the legacy of that experience is that we will have an entire grouping of high-level entrepreneurs, people who have set up billion-dollar investment funds, who are now going to be supporting the OECS in helping to do that investment. But the important thing about it is that our perspective on that investment is that these investors are helping to build capacity so that OECS nationals and citizens of the Caribbean have to have a stake in those investments. They are actually going to be coming in to invest in startup businesses and innovations that are being developed by persons of the Caribbean.
Okay, and you mentioned Les Brown and Damon John. If you could just get into some of the speakers, definitely they are, they take the spotlight because of their background, teaching us the science of achievement. Motivational speaker, renowned motivational speaker Les Brown, as well as Damon John, star of ABC's Shark Tank. Tell us the rationale behind, getting these specific individuals to come to engage participants.
Well, we wanted to first of all, Les Brown was deliberately selected because he's famous as a motivational speaker, but insisting that everything starts with a mind shift, that we have to move from seeing our limitations and to see our possibilities. And there's a famous saying by Ford, Henry Ford, who popularized, commercialized the car. And Henry Ford said, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. So you get that. Basically everything starts with whether you really believe enough in yourself, despite whatever the circumstances that you face. If you believe you can do it, then you can do it. If you believe you cannot do it, then there's no way you'll do it. And so we start with that philosophical position, and begin to walk people through the processes of seeing our potential and seeing our possibilities. And then a lot of the other speakers and the experts who are brought into the SDM are meant to be the sort of supporting cast that will help us define the way forward, because we need to do a lot of things differently going forward. And this is meant to set that stage, and to set the stage in the context of regional integration, because individually, none of us can do this by ourselves. But if we deepen our integration effort, if we hang together as the OECS, if we move on a united front as CARICOM, then there are huge possibilities for us in this region. Okay. I mean, a simple example, oceans, for example, the blue economy is a big feature of the SDM. And there's just one simple statistic that shows how important it is. Our land mass in the Caribbean, our sea area that each of us controls, is 83 times the size of our land mass. So who knows what are the unexplored riches, the wealth of the sea, the opportunities that blue economy contains that has not been tapped. Now, in all of our discussions, we have a project with the World Bank on the blue economy that involves a series of policy measures, but working also with agencies like UNCTAD, the United Nations Trade Agency. We are developing a bio trade initiative that will look at how do we, because we have declining stocks of high-value sea products like conch, lambi, well, lambi is conch, but sea egg, and so on, sea moss. How do we, rather than further deplete the wild stock, actually create farms that can commercialize these products? And these are high value products: lobster, conch, buigo, the seashell, and so on. So to do that, but to do it in a way that not just commercializes it for a niche global market, but importantly also provides better opportunity for the coastal communities who have been the traditional users of these and the harvesters of these products.
I know the OECS has spoken quite extensively and advocated for public-private partnerships and collaborations. Can you speak to what extent we will be seeing that sort of discussion during the summit?
Well, again, that was part of the conceptualization of the summit. How do we develop public-private partnerships that really are beneficial to our societies and build our capacity rather than just be extractive investments? COVID has also accelerated the importance of that, because with COVID, our governments, all of our governments are very cash-strapped. There have been so many demands. Our economy has come to a virtual standstill. So whatever solutions we put in place have to be solutions that add real value, that minimize the cost to governments, but enable us to make that transformational leap to a different way of doing things. And that is one of the guiding principles behind the SDM.
Okay, let's talk about your target audience, because if you go to the website, you will see that you're targeting senior government officials, industry and sector leaders, global entrepreneurs, civil society. And also in the write-up, it is targeting also the common man. Also,
common person.
The common person, my apologies, to the understanding, just renewing the psyche for understanding the realm of limitations, from the realm of limitations to the realm of possibilities. And at this point in time, we so far seen COVID-19 has flattened everything in terms of everybody keeping their ears to the ground to every single development globally, everybody being impacted. Can you speak to the significance of everyone from the highest office to the common person being in tune with this?
It's consistent with the mind shift that we're talking about, because you see, we unfortunately, since independence, we have sort of developed a culture where people depend on government to do everything and expect government to solve all the problems. Now that has happened both in terms of mindsets, but it has also happened institutionally, where governments hold the power, so therefore they do things and the rest citizens have to follow. I think what COVID has done is show that it is impossible going forward to develop our societies unless there is the broadest level of engagement, commitment, and involvement. And so that is why it is so important that we reach out not just to policymakers, to movers and shakers in official positions of power, but also to the ordinary citizen, because they too have to think creatively and look at opportunities. And this is not something that is totally out of the box, because if you think about it, you look at our sidewalks, there are small entrepreneurs doing things. People find ways to do a hustle, make a living. A lot of persons have creative ideas at all levels of the society. The question is, how do you tap that energy, and how do you provide opportunity for a good idea to be scaled up to something really productive and profitable?
And speaking of hustle, OECS Republic Bank Business Model Competition precedes the summit. Tell us about the competition, where it's at right now.
Well, actually, when I left the morning to come here today, we were just going through another level of the competition to narrow it down to the 8 who will then be pitching to Damon, John, and the other investors.
Nice.
So it's been quite an exciting experience. Again, it's not going to be a one-shot thing. While this is all being televised and it's and it is going to be, it's becoming a popular thing. The idea is to leave behind an infrastructure of entrepreneurial support, use that as a springboard to design an ecosystem for entrepreneurship. Because what we're discovering is not just a simple thing as a pitch, it's not as simple as it appears, because unless you have a good business plan, you may have a good idea, but unless you have a good business plan, you're not able to do a good pitch. So we have been frantic in the last couple of weeks, taking those young persons, 170 of them with excellent business ideas. Some of them have actually started the businesses, but there are a lot of gaps in what they're doing. They may not have a business plan, they may not know how to pitch their product, they may not have run the numbers in terms of the market research that needs to be done. So we're realizing that there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done in nurturing and supporting and encouraging and guiding our entrepreneurs to reach that point of scale up.
Okay, so the last update we got, the media got, was that 15 had been selected for the semifinals. Tell us where we're at right now in terms of the 8 now.
Today we're now doing the 8. Yeah, I left them in the process of doing their pitch. We pre-record it, so by the time you see it, what we're doing today, you'll see 3 or 4 days from now.
Okay, wonderful. And they will have the opportunity to make their pitch to Mr. Damon.
Yeah, now that final pitch will be live at the SDM event.
Okay, and speak to us about the schedule. What can we expect on the 23rd and the 24th on these 2 days?
Okay, so the 23rd we start with an opening ceremony, and that is going to see speeches by the Prime Minister, the chairman of the OECS, Prime Minister Skerritt, some remarks by myself. There's a very high-level global figure we are still pursuing to give the opening feature address. I'm not at liberty to disclose it at this point because we have not finalized that as yet. And then we go into concurrent sessions. So the question of juvenile delinquency, there'll be a session on that in terms of restoring broken dreams and investing in young people. There'll be the concurrent session on the blue economy. There's going to be a very interesting session on education, the use of virtual reality and artificial intelligence in transforming classroom instruction. Now that may sound like really far out field, high tech, but the reality is that it's not as high tech as we've been led to believe. There are huge opportunities and possibilities for using artificial intelligence and virtual reality. And in fact, even before this SDM thing, one of our OECS companies actually won an award from a French entrepreneurial competition we had on virtual reality. And we have introduced that group to the ministers of education. The ministers have actually experienced the use of virtual reality face-to-face. So this is one. Then there's another on resilience, building resilience in the Caribbean on the front of coastal transport, because there's been, the need for proper sea transportation across the region is critical. And then financing the blue-green economy, we're going to be having a session looking at financial initiatives to promote inclusive green growth and the blue economy. We'll be looking at resource sustainability in terms of the circular economy, and invested in human capital. So the whole human resource development piece is going to be examined. On the next day, there'll be a series of concurrent sessions looking at the platforms and the ecosystems for enabling the digital economy. We'll be looking at new approaches to resource mobilization in the face of declining development aid. And that's where this is going to connect, again, what the point I made earlier about linking with grassroots institutions, because here we bring the credit unions into focus, we bring the OECS stock market into focus. We're trying to work to help to revitalize the stock market so it becomes a real instrument of capital accumulation and support to growing businesses. Then there's the question of the economic union in how do we leverage the power of the economic union of the OECS in addressing challenges posed by COVID in the supply chain. So, for example, our pharmaceutical procurement service has been recognized as a focal point for CARICOM as well, for mobilization, purchasing of equipment and supplies and so on. Transitioning to e-mobility and the considerations for policy, for practice, for the regulatory environment. We also will have a concurrent session on food opportunities, on building world-class brands that are viable in the global markets. And there's some interesting side events as well. So, for example, Kirk Elliott is going to be doing a session on smartphone photography. And Kirk is someone with great ideas on really innovative approaches to giving the tourists an experience that they will forever remember and forever treasure. So that's it in terms of the, and then we are going to end with a keynote that will really look at how do we move from limitations to possibilities.
Wonderful. And your partnerships, we're running out on time, but just want to get in the partners. I know Republic Bank is at the forefront with you guys. Tell us about the other organizations partnering.
Well, there are a number of private sector entities. We have, for example, Massey has been one of the very supportive partners, as you know, particularly on the COVID front. But even beyond COVID, we've already started certain conversations, like how, for example, can we align a partnership with Massey that would see greater purchase of agricultural produce, more prominence for agri products produced in the OECS on their supermarket shelves, and so on. We have Sagicor, who's been a really very supportive entity as well. And in fact, again, coming out of that, Sagicor, as a result of their engagement with us, has been talking about, today they'll be running a webinar on financial instruments that are going to support business development in the Caribbean. And then there are smaller things like the GISs across the region. A number of other companies have come on board supporting particular initiatives, but all of that is going to be branded in the virtual fair, the online platform that we'll be using, so people will see the sponsors and there'll be opportunities to visit their booths and see how they are aligning their own products to the aspirations of the SDM.
Okay, in terms of participants, what can we expect? What does the registration list look like so far? And where can persons register?
You can register online. The email, the URL is oecsSDM.com, and everything can be done online.
Okay.
We are hoping to have about at least 3,000 persons online participating in this, and not just from the OECS, but globally. There's a lot of traction happening. We've reached out to the Caribbean diaspora in Canada, in the UK, in the US, and they are very enthusiastic about participating.
Okay, wonderful. And any final words before I switch up a little bit on you in terms of the Sustainable Development Movement 2020 Summit?
Well, I think it is going to be a unique experience. We want to encourage young people in particular to sign up for that. In fact, some of our sponsors have actually purchased tickets that will be given to the youth constituency so that they participate.
Nice.
Because this is really about igniting a fire and exciting our imagination about the development possibilities that we have. We are too often limited by the problems that are in front of us and not seeing the possibilities.
Okay. And now to COVID-19, before we wrap up, the schools have reopened in the OECS under varying circumstances, considering the levels of the pandemic in each country. Can you just speak to the observations of the OECS so far? Any recommendations going forward?
Well, all of the recommendations we had to do, we've given to governments, because we have WhatsApp groups of all PSs in education, the chief education officers. And one of the things we noticed about a month ago was that the PSs on the WhatsApp group were saying, what are your plans? Asking each other what you're planning to do about the reopening of school. So we actually convened a meeting, and we did a draft protocol looking at all of what we feel needs to be done prior to the reopening of school to prepare adequately, what should be done on the first day, what should be done weekly, monthly, and termly. Some of the ideas, this has been given as a template to all of the member states. So essentially, the idea is not to dictate, but to at least provide a harmonized framework for the reopening. And it's amazing sometimes the way ideas come up, because today, for example, one of my staff members at the commission was talking about her son and said that he's really not excited about going back to school. And the teacher, as an exercise, asked them to write a letter expressing their feelings about school reopening. And his thing was very sad, because to him, reopening of school is that school is not the same. He can't touch his friends, he can't interact with them in the way that he wished to. But that spurred an idea. So we are actually working right now on setting up a working group of curriculum experts, as well as some of the best teachers, especially in the early grades across the OECS, and some physical education tutors, to develop a manual of activities that can be done that would excite the kids and break the barrier that they see that the physical distancing imposes on them. So what kind of games can we design? Maybe some no-touch ring games or activities that they would find exciting, that would enable them to interact with each other, but still maintain the physical distancing protocols. And we intend to put this up online when we develop it, so all teachers in the OECS have access to it. And as they develop new games and activities, that can also be added to the repertoire. So, you know, in a way, it's challenging times, but as I keep saying, they're exciting opportunities.
Wonderful. And finally, for me, yesterday was observed United Nations World Literacy Day. If you could just, as somebody who I know has a background in championing the cause of literacy, if you could just speak to, well, first of all, the Chief Education Officer did indicate some concerning rates in terms of literacy here on island. If you could just give any support, any recommendations as to how we can improve literacy in our side of the world, especially at this time as we're dealing with online learning, COVID-19, the pandemic, schools, you know, being, you know, on the just on the throes of perhaps closing if the pandemic starts over again. So what can we do in terms of improving literacy?
Well, yesterday we had a webinar with the U.S. Embassy, and I would encourage people to look at the video on that online, because we were speaking about the early learners program that focus on reading, improving reading. And we've drawn a number of resources into this effort. Guys from the Denry segment have done, you've seen some of the popular sort of, I don't know what they call the music, but they've been, you know, popularizing the message of read, learn, the importance of reading to learning. What we need to recognize is that literacy is not something that happens only in schools, and therefore the challenge of literacy in the wider society is a very broad challenge that needs to be tackled at many levels. And what is then required is that we look at adult literacy. That is something that has not been adequately attended to in many of our societies, and the question of post-school learning. So it's not just learning to read within school, but after school, the opportunities that adults are being given, and the relevance of the material that is being used to promote that. I come from a school of literacy that's very influenced by Paulo Freire, a Latin American educator, that believes that we don't just learn to read the word, but we learn to read the world. So the process of literacy must involve a multidisciplinary approach that helps you not just develop the mechanics of reading, but also the process of critical thinking and of understanding what you read.
Okay, Thank you very much for your time. Dr. Jules, the Director General Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, speaking to us on the much anticipated Sustainable Development Movement 2020 Summit that will be held from the 23rd to the 24th virtually. We do encourage you to go to the OECS website to get some more information on this event. It will be featuring renowned motivational speaker Les Brown, who has gone into and I dare say become a genius in the science of achievement. Also Damon John, star of ABC's Shark Tank and CEO of the Shark Group, and many other leaders in their various fields will be attending and speaking, and we do encourage you to go and get some more information again on the website. My name is Jessie Leons, signing off for now on this information session that we've just had on this upcoming event. This has been another midday update on NTN. Do stay tuned for more programming on this station. Goodbye.